Who was the creepy weird kid at your school? Story 1. Two stick out in my mind. One was a kid in high school. He had all the hallmarks of your standard issue socially awkward nerd in that he couldn't relate to people his own age, had no idea how to blend into a crowd, and was quite smart. The problem was that he also had a temper and would fly off the handle when people teased him. After a while, he became the target of the few very nasty bullies because they wanted to watch him flip out. He flipped out all right. He hit one of them in the face with his math textbook, spine first, broke the bully's nose. That was right after the Springfield and Columbine shooting, so everyone was on edge around the kid, afraid he'd go over the line. He disappeared at the end of junior year, and we never saw him again. The second guy was in college. He was another stereotype, but this time it was the stereotype of the large, drunk, stupid redneck. Always spoke with a pronounced drawl, even though he grew up here in Portland. Had very conservative and loud opinions about anything, and most of it was a regurgitation of stuff from Fox News. He was also sadly a member of my fraternity. What made him creepy was when he got rejected by a girl in the journalism department. He took it very hard, but it soon became a victim complex with him. He thought everyone was out to get him. His MySpace, tells you how long ago this was, posts started to get weirder and weirder. Talking about how people hated him, how frustrated he was, how he wanted to just make them stop. We grew concerned, started watching him closely. Then the shooting at Virginia Tech happened, and we realized what he was posting was a sanitized version of what Sung-hee Cho had been writing/recording. We finally called in the college administration when he posted, and I'm quoting verbatim here, "Ave Maria would make a great soundtrack to a shooting spree. It really inspires creativity." The college turned that over to the cops, who got a warrant and searched his house. Confiscated several guns and a ton of ammo, plus several notebooks full of hate writing about the students there. Drawn plans of the school showing shooting angles and lists of people's names. He was held under a mental eval for some time, but never charged with a crime. He really hadn't committed one yet. He moved to Arizona sometime after that, and I haven't heard of him since. Honestly, folks, if you are ever suspicious of someone who might be heading toward doing a school shooting, tell someone. Maybe then they can get some help and you can prevent a disaster. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying and not going into nuance here, but just don't brush things off, okay? Story 2. I was the creep. In 3rd grade, 1997 for me, my parents bought me a hot pink and purple pencil case. Every day before school, I made an effort to get there early so I could spend some time on the playground and grass area. I would spend all of this time immersed in my obsession to collect as many ladybugs as possible, to put them and nothing else in my hot pink and purple pencil case. On a good morning, I could easily get 25 plus ladybugs captured and secured within my pencil box prison in about 10 minutes. Phase 2 of my plan involved filing into my classroom nonchalantly and getting set up at my desk. I crammed everything I needed for school in the small upper part of my 2-bin school desk. The bigger section underneath was where I kept my pencil case, alone. I would stare at it longingly, knowing that only I knew that it was there, waiting. Phase 3 usually came very quickly after Phase 1, as I have no self-control. I can't contain my spaghetti over ladybugs. Boredom would set in, or maybe it was a fleeting feeling of anxiety about my friends in the box. I would stealthily reach into my box and open the pencil case. Sometimes I would prop the pencil box open with a cerulean-colored Crayola. I digress. Phase 5. Ladybugs everywhere. Everybody would panic in the beginning, but as this turned into a routine thing for me, everybody came to expect and accept the plague of ladybugs in the classroom every morning. Story 3. We had a nutcase at my school. She would get obsessive crushes on people and go way over the top to try to get their attention. For example, she once cut her arm in art class and used the resulting blood to write the name of the unfortunate object of her affections on the wall of the corridor in 2-foot letters. She refused to go to lessons until her unwitting beau told her directly to do so. It got to the point where she wouldn't do anything unless he told her to. She'd just sit in the playground. The flip side was that she would do pretty much anything he told her to do. For example, lick the floor, crawl around on all fours for the entirety of lunchtime. I once saw her sitting on the floor amidst a crowd of what must have been about half of the school just queefing, fanny farting all over the place for about half an hour. Used to make up ridiculous stories about herself and then defend their veracity to the point where, if you questioned them, she'd go psycho and start screaming until whichever poor sod had attracted her laser beam focus that week could be fished out of his lesson to tell her to stop. She was pregnant with Anakin Skywalker's baby. Her invisible boyfriend lived in a tree. She was a lion. Roar. She was a vampire, etc. This is one of those instances where I can't help but wonder if there was some trauma or abuse going on at home, and that this was all a cry for help. Obviously, I'm not qualified to say anything for sure, but I hope that girl found some help. Story 4. My best friend and I were the weird, creepy kids in my high school. We were the only two people who dressed goth in the entire school. Mind you, we went to school in a small rural town in Texas. Several students would avoid coming near me in the halls for fear I'd put a hex on them, thinking I practiced witchcraft. My friend experienced similar results from his attire as well. The reason? When I was a sophomore. I started wearing all black because it fit my mood when I was dealing with the aftermath. I tried talking about it to several friends, but given the fact it was a small football-oriented school and town, and my attacker was one of the star players, I was treated worse than garbage by friends and classmates alike. I started dressing in ways that suited my mood, and lo and behold, the town's first goth kid was created. My friend, pretty much my sole friend who didn't turn on me, noticed the effect that my dressing that way had on the Southern Baptist populace. They avoided me like the plague and left me the hell alone. Back then, I was the only person in our school who knew he was gay. However, he was heavily bullied. So he adopted my general style of all black and became our school's second creepy goth kid. We enjoyed the results. Nobody messed with us anymore. We started adding pentagrams and weird symbols and the like to our wardrobes, which increased the effects. Occasionally, one of the jocks would decide to bully my friend, and I would walk up behind them, clutch one of my necklaces, and start chanting in gibberish. It usually resulted in the bully getting scared and running away. The teachers and administration never gave us crap for it because we were straight-A students and were always sweet as can be in class. I think the majority of them understood that we were responding to a crappy situation in the only way we had. This right here is what I'm talking about. People that you might judge as being weird or whatever might just be dealing with trauma. I feel awful for OP having to deal with that in a small town. I hope that life has treated you better since then. Story 5. This really weird kid came to our school when I was in grade 11. He was a year under me. He always walked with a lurch and was really loud-spoken by nature, which didn't help since he always talked about the most up stuff. He would always make Chewbacca noises too, and we were exceptionally good at it. He'd just be in class and you can faintly hear the down the hall. He would always butt in on everyone's conversations too. I would just be talking to my friend and he would just appear in our social circle, just standing, waiting, listening, just a really strange kid. There was also that omnipresent anime-obsessive girl who wore cat-related accessories and periodically acted as a cat herself. She would show up to school in full cosplay from time to time as well, and she always had mysterious shipments from Japan still in the shipping box that she'd bring to school. She was also very strange. Story 6. My high school had a boy 1 grade above me who had some sort of mental issue. I only ever saw him in the cafeteria, so I don't know if they put him in regular or special classes, but he would constantly talk out loud to nobody in a variety of voices. No one ever sat with him, the bullies all just ignored him, and no one really discussed or acknowledged him. His chosen table was right next to the one my friends and I would congregate at, and I think I eventually decided he was reciting lines from some movie or TV show that I'd never seen. He approached me once to ask a question about a service dog I happened to have at the time, which startled the hell out of me because he'd never appeared to be actively looking at anyone, and I just figured he was content in his own world. It was a shock to realize he could vocalize his own thoughts and that he would do so voluntarily. I'm not sure he entirely understood my answer, though. On that note, I guess I was another weird kid because I was one of the disabled ones. It was fun. Story 7. There was a kid in my 11th grade class that had been homeschooled up until that year and was extremely socially awkward. In one class, our teacher randomly paired us up and we had to interview our partner and then make a poster educating others about them. Really stupid project, and I got paired up with this kid. During the interview, he asked my favorite food, which at the time was chili cheese fries. Fast forward to next week when the project is due and this guy shows up with a massive poster shaped and decorated to look like a giant plate of chili cheese fries. Like a 5 foot by 5 foot cardboard cutout of cheese fries with glitter and 3D effects and everything, with my name written in huge letters across the top. I was horrified. I've got to say, honestly, sounds pretty tame. Like, I can see how the project might be beneficial, and like, they let folks know you like chili cheese fries. Why are you freaking out? Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 8. When I was in high school, one of my friends, a 20-year-old junior that was extremely dirty and creepy, ate lunch and got a glob of mayonnaise on his cheek. Since he was so nasty and creepy, he never wiped his mouth or bathed or any of that kind of inconvenient nonsense, so when I saw him before school the next day, he had this transparent yellow glob on his cheek. It was still there when school let out that day. The dude also had crabs and would scratch around with his hands down his pants, and after pulling his hand out, he would have 5 or 6 lice under his fingernails. He would showcase his crabs to impress the chicks we hung out with at lunch. Good times. Story 9. There was this kid in my high school who always wore a leather jacket, stunk something fierce, mix of cigarettes and BO, and he always had greasy black hair. Not sure if he just didn't shower or put grease in it to look cool. People called him Greased Lightning. He was generally a nice guy, but he was also known for having anger problems and flipping out at teachers and other students regularly. One day in art class, my friend mocked him and called him Greased Lightning, and he jumped on my friend's back and stabbed him half a dozen times in the neck with a pencil. Don't worry, my friend is okay. Story 10. Way back in middle school, there was this kid named Eric. He was brilliant, or it seemed so at the time, with his schoolwork. He was on honor roll every semester. He was short and anorexic, and he never said a single word to anyone that was deemed social. One day I decided to talk to him, and we shared an interest in music and TV shows. I ended up going to his house one day after school, and my God, I never went back. His entire room was filled up with drawings of dead and lynched black people. All he could talk about was his hatred toward minorities, and it turned out his father was a part of the KKK. This was in Chicago, Illinois. Holy... I want to feel bad because clearly this kid has been brainwashed by his awful racist parent, but like, getting to that age and drawing stuff like that? That's awful. Story 11. A former high school buddy of mine was pretty much known as the weird kid. He would come to school wearing a Lonsdale shirt, and my country Lonsdale is usually worn by neo-Nazis, a Carl Canny pant usually worn by wannabe gangsters and actual gangsters, and traditional wooden shoes on his dirt bike without a jacket in the middle of the winter. So that's one reason why he was considered weird. Also, if you'd pull his hair, it would fall out, and he was pretty rich, so he always bought everybody free stuff. Great guy. Story 12. There was this girl in my elementary school that believed she was a stripper. Not only did she strip naked in class, she used to spit everywhere, and she in the bag of marshmallows we were using for s'mores. We did not get s'mores that day. Story 13. Haha, that was me. At the age of around 11 or 12, I had very few friends and spent every break/lunchtime walking around in circles in the playground. It must have looked incredibly odd, but I was just imagining stuff. I had a very vivid imagination as a child and never understood social skills, etc. Didn't help that everyone in the town knew about my home situation, so nobody wanted to have much to do with me. I was known as the ugly kid who walked in circles every single day. Story 14. Brendan from Spanish class. He would pick at his acne that was on his face, neck, and back, and eat it. Eat it! The dead skin, blood. Oh my God, I can't read it. Editor, just put it up. I can't read it. Then one day we were switching seats, and I sat down in Brendan's, oh my God, I'm gonna throw up, old seat. The seat was very warm, and I mentioned it to the person sitting next to me. Then I made eye contact with Brendan, and he whispered, "You're welcome." I've read some really gnarly stuff on these channels, but holy, that literally almost made me vomit. Story 15. There was this one kid in my high school that I had a few classes with. Once he came to class, and he had carved the letter I into his cheek with a razor blade. He said the I stood for individual. He was sent home for the next few days. Another thing he did was for Secret Santa, his gift was old fingernail and toe clippings of his, since he wanted to give a part of himself. I felt bad for the guy. He wasn't mean or anything. He just had some effed up issues going on in his head. Story 16. There was a kid in my high school who had Asperger's and a long history of harassing girls, touching himself behind them, stalking, sitting at the preppy girls' table at lunch because they didn't have the heart/spine to say no, raising his hand to ask completely irrelevant and or morbid questions, and letting his bodily functions happen right in the middle of class while vociferously denying it was him. Talented artist, though. Story 17. There was this guy named Josh in my elementary school. I guess you could say he was a dark character. He always wore trench coats and would always look at the ground. He had this creepy smile and just gave everyone the heebie-jeebies. He tried to add me on MSN one day and his email address was deadgirlsdon'tsayno. This was in grade 6 or 7. Needless to say, I never spoke to him again. Story 18. My parents were trying to get me into a class called Basic Skills. I thought it was because they wanted me to be better at math. A week ago, a friend I went to high school with told me that Basic Skills was designed to teach the creepy kids how to be normal. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Story 19. Ming. Ming had a lot of issues. A lot were temper-based. Every single time you would see him in the hall, he would be power walking, reading some manga comic, not looking up once. Or he would be running down the halls, parkouring that running along the walls. One time in my class, he was upset. He got a 92 and threw his desk across the room, and it nailed the kid in the head. I miss Ming. Story 20. I'll never forget the kid who thought he was a car. You'd see him zooming around school at lunchtime in car mode. Whenever he'd stopped running, he'd pretend to hit the brakes. He even beeped at people. This sounds like pretty standard behavior for a little kid, but this guy did it until he was 16. He left school last year and, not surprisingly, has his driver's license. I mean, say what you want, but if he kept it up for that long, clearly it was meaningful to him. If you got a passion that doesn't hurt someone or isn't the grossest, then more power to you. Story 21. There was this kid when we were about 12 to 13 in science class that had a bad list. He was your usual weird kid, quiet, didn't smell great, sat alone at lunch. Asked him what the list was one day. A list of people I need to punish, was his response. I was so nice to him after that. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.